Okay.
Yeah.
So, welcome back, everybody. Today's episode, pod class, talk, and meditation is going to be inspired by the telepathy tapes. And some of us are a little slow to get to this because this was the number one podcast in the world at the end of last year, 2024, and into 2025. Move over, Joe Rogan. People are interested in telepathy.
Yeah.
And for those of you who maybe haven't heard it yet, or listened to it, watched, yeah, it's audio, but you can become a member, I think, and watch a bunch of the video that they have. But it is about nonverbal speakers who are telepathic and show other special abilities. And season one is 10 episodes. I believe there's a season two out or coming out. I'm not
Not
sure.
yet. I think it's coming out soon. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And it's just a very fascinating topic. And we want to discuss, what we've experienced with it, and then maybe take some time and have each of you sit in meditation and see if you can open up to some of those abilities. And it is riveting. I don't know what you
It
thought,
is.
Cody.
Oh, it's very well done. And I think you can go online. I haven't done it yet and see the video of some of the quote unquote tests, but really demonstrations of the abilities that all of these people they highlight have. And there was a claim one of the people made that all non-speakers are telepathic. And I actually think all people, human beings, we have telepathy. We've talked about telepathy. One of the interesting things as we get into this that I really got out of it, aside just from how amazing it was, the ability to demonstrate it, was where it really ultimately goes beyond telepathy. When we talk about telepathy, we think of being able to hear each other's thoughts or read thoughts, but as they get into the whole exploration in the telepathy tapes, it really kind of goes beyond telepathy into what we talk about a lot, like seeing pictures. And what is that really as an ability? The question they kind of grapple with, like how do you kind of frame that? What is it when you can just see the whole picture that someone's sharing, or they're looking at a picture and you, the person who's reading, sees the picture? And of course, in our language, we would call that clairvoyance. And so, beyond these people having this ability of telepathy, it really comes out over the course of the tapes and the exploration that they are clairvoyant. They're seeing energy, they're seeing pictures, they're seeing spirit. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, they're everything from having connected dreams with each other, meeting in a in some other dimension with a bunch of other nonverbal speaking kids that are across the planet that they say they're friends with, that they've
Yeah.
met only in these telepathic kind of ways, seeing spirits in the room. It goes on and on and on. It starts off teasing you with just this child can tell you any number their parent thinks of. Um, Actually, in episode two, there's a kid in New Jersey who the number that's chosen is in the millions. It's like 3 million. Da, 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 da. And he says the exact, I mean, he types it out because he can't speak the exact number in the millions. That was incredible. One was, I think, it was a number from 100 to like 900, something along those lines, 999, and it was like 698. The mother chose, and the child, I think this one was in Mexico, had types out the exact number. That was amazing. They images for random number generators. So instead of the parent coming up with the number, they use a random number generator. The parent sees it, and then the child will type it out. Uh, and there are, of course, skeptics who look at all that and go, no, impossible, no way, it's all cute or fraud or something like that. But I could tell you, when I used to run the intuitive school in Hawaii, We were upstairs in a building, and underneath us, what was a group of kids, mostly with Down syndrome. And my God, were they sensitive and telepathic and intuitive. I mean, they were so incredibly in tune and aware. I have so many stories from that. They really blew my mind on so many occasions. And I think a lot of people who have worked with nonverbal kids will tell you these stories. In fact, I was looking at the comments just on YouTube under the telepathy tapes, and there are thousands of comments of people going, I'm nonverbal. I have these abilities. My child's nonverbal, has these abilities. My cousin, my friend, countless people are just like, thank you for finally validating this experience that I've had. And I think it's been very healing for a lot of people. Probably why it was the most popular show in the world. People are like, finally, thank you for validating this experience that I've had that people keep saying can't possibly be real. So I
Yeah.
think it's pretty amazing. And last thing I'll say is there's that saying, people who have never studied it know it can't be real, and people who have know it is. Something
Right.
along those lines.
That's a that's kind of amazing. Yes, that's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing the how validating it was to listen to them. And you and I both know in teaching people, one of the biggest things is we're all having these experiences. It's kind of getting a person into a place to isolate that experience beyond all the noise and chatter so they can actually really have the full experience, but then get validation for it. And it's always in teaching someone to connect with their psychic abilities and start to listen to them and express them, it always comes back to validating that experience. One of the fascinating things in the series to me was where one of the um, I want to call them students, but they're not. They're the people who have this ability. Um, was saying that they can't really do it if the person doesn't believe it, and if there's not an openness, then there's so much static and so much noise that it's very hard to read someone. You know, we find that in reading people. If someone comes in and sits down in not a level of healthy skepticism where they're going to question it for themselves, but disbelief skepticism, sits down in front of you and says, "Oh, prove it to me." It's very difficult to see very much with that person. The person has to be open and receptive, and they can, we can have a little bit of skepticism, but we have to have the belief that it's possible, the belief that it's there. And my skepticism maybe is I don't quite know how much, or I don't know where the boundaries are of what these abilities are. But if there's no belief at all, if there's no openness, it's very difficult to read someone. You know, in the school
Yeah.
I came up in, one the my teacher would say, never play prove it with this stuff. Never try to prove it to someone. And it's because it's a trap where they're always going to invalidate whatever happens. And that what really stood out to me in the tapes was, even with all of this evidence of the person demonstrating it over and over again, there are skeptics who will invalidate it, and they're invalidating it in so many different ways that they talk about. It's kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah, we've both encountered that so many times, and to break somebody's worldview like that, it could be very intense. I think it's akin to someone having a very strong political point of view, and that being challenged, and the more it gets challenged, the more the ego actually hardens and defends itself, because you're not defending an idea, you're defending your sense of self, connected to what you believe reality is and isn't. And really, the skeptic is saying we are not really connected in these ways, where there are no other dimensions or spirituality. We're just this mechanical thing that we were born, we die, and it's over. And you can't, if you challenge that belief, you challenge my entire sense of identity and the way I see the world. And that's just psychologically too much for some people. And so they freak
Yeah.
out. And if
Yeah, they have to defend that at all costs,
yes,
that view of where they've made sense of reality in a certain way, and all of their sense of self is tied to that, it being that way. And then you have evidence like this that is so clearly shows that there's something outside of that worldview. And yes, they have to defend it um, at all
and
costs, really, in all different ways, and even in ways that don't make sense, like
yeah.
questioning the scientific method of it. It's just like there's no way that this is being faked, and yet they'll say, "Oh, it's just being faked."
Yeah, so it's Kai Dickens. She's the filmmaker who created
Yeah,
this, and then she brought in a neuroscientist and psychiatrist from John Hopkins who was at Harvard, Diane Hennessy Powell, and I mean, in one episode, she gets an Airbnb, buys all the equipment, has her whole entire team, in a more neutral place. She blindfolds kids. They do it from different rooms. Everything is videoed, right? There's they try
from
to take
multiple angles, by the way,
yeah,
videoed from 4 or 5
yeah,
angles.
they
Yeah,
they try to take every precaution, obviously, that they can. Of course, that's not the same as being in a lab, and I guess the skeptical person would say that the parent is sending cues to the kid, which would either mean fraud by dozens of families across the planet, from Croatia to Mexico to New Jersey, or they're so unconscious and proficient at it, all of the families, that we're talking about a whole nother phenomenon that's amazing. But that it just still doesn't explain so many of the things that happen. For example, random image generator. I'm not sure how you would, even in a subtle way, get your kid to know what a random image would be from a generator almost
right.
instantly. So that's, if you're not physically next to them and pressing the buttons or guiding the hand. So, what I found with the skeptical side of it is there's always a general critique, but rarely do you find a critique of the actual specific scenario, situation, and people. It's just they paint it with a broad brush. It's impossible, and then they move on. And
Yeah,
I've seen that happen over and over. And for me as a teacher, well, one, it doesn't interest me. We've been doing this for our entire adult lives.
right.
We're so beyond that. But what maybe is useful today for those of you here and meditating with us, what can be useful, I think, is one, learning how to see and get through some of that energy, because that skepticism energy can stifle your abilities. There's a fear of being persecuted, of being wrong, of being tabooed, right? And that will actually shut down some of the abilities. And then the other is, all right, well, how do I actually open up to them and build confidence and certainty in them? And when you do that, there was a spiritual teacher from India. One of his students said, how do you deal with the skeptics? And his answer was, how does an elephant deal when he's walking down the street and a little doggy's barking at him? Nothing. He just
Right.
keeps walking.
Ignore
Uh,
it. Yeah.
you do your thing. And so, but there is, especially in the beginning stages for people developing these abilities, they hit a lot of that energy programming from society, that materialistic worldview, reductionist worldview that is so intense and at odds with every other culture. Probably, almost, I'm not an anthropologist, but almost every other culture in the entire history of planet Earth. I've been
Right.
around the world. I've lived in a lot of places. I've sat with a lot of cultures, and all uniformly, this is a natural part of their worldview, their spiritual beliefs. Ours is the first culture to really reject this, and I think what's happened is we've become so intellectual. There's so much noise that we actually can't hear and see anymore because it's been overridden with so much external input and noise. And maybe that's why these nonverbal kids are so good at it, because they don't have all of necessarily all of that noise. They can't focus on external communication, and it's like someone who's blind who becomes better at listening, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps their other abilities are enhanced, and so they're an amazing petri dish to look at this and work with it. But everybody
Yeah.
has it. Everybody.
And really validate that it exists because everybody has it. There's special or unique in how clearly they can bring it through, but I don't think they're unique in having those abilities. I think we all do. It's just the noise of the world drowns it out. The noise of the body drowns it out, and it does take a practice of meditation to quiet oneself to really get back in touch with it and open it up. And yeah, one of the most challenging energies to get someone through in training them is all of that skepticism energy. Not that you as the individual are the skeptic, it's all of the energy that's been kind of put into us and programmed into us that it doesn't exist. Because I watch students all the time, do a reading and communicate, see something so clearly and communicate it so clearly, and yet doubt that experience. And that's that skepticism energy or that invalidation that could be real. And yet they just did it, they just had it. And a whole line of people all seeing the same thing. And it's totally validated. And yet hours later, maybe doubting, did that really happen? Could that really be real? And it's not them, it's encountering all of that negative invalidation, skepticism energy.
I will say there is good reason for some of it if you look at pop culture and if you look at how many psychics there are out there on the corner doing palm readings or whatever it is, and they are fake, and there isn't, there is so much of that and pulling on people's emotions to make money, and so they have ruined it for sure. Uh, so I totally get that part. If someone's had a bad experience, I went once in Sedona with my cousin, and she got like an aura picture done in a reading, and it was just such BS, and it was so painfully bad to stand there and watch and bite my lip and
Right.
be like, "This is not it." And she loved it, was like, no, this is great. I love it. And I was like, oh, this is literally the opposite of every single thing I teach and how to do it, the form, the way you communicate, what you say, what you don't. No, programming people into their futures. I mean, the whole damn thing, Cody, I was so frustrated. And so, from that perspective, I totally get where people are like, that looks like a bunch of crap. And so, I do think most of it is a bunch of crap, and that's why we have this academy, is to do it for real in a slow methodical way. And if I was training someone, which I do, uh, I would not be interested in them believing this or disbelieving it. I would just be interested in them having the inner subjective scientific experiment experience of closing their eyes and learning to see and getting their answers for themselves, and over time sharpening their abilities. And if somebody really wants to know if it's going to work or not work, you in my experience, you got to give it a year or two or more to get the noise to come down, to maybe release some pain, to be able to find the center of your head and learn to read energy. That is not something that happens over for some people maybe, but for a lot of people it's not something that happens overnight, and they're not willing to put in the time and energy to develop this skill set. And so for them it's seemingly unreachable, and it is what it takes. So I mean, in Buddhist cultures you'd go into the caves and you would meditate for years and years before they would even teach you some of these techniques, because they didn't want you to use them in the wrong way. Many cultures have them, but they've always been for like the special few, like the
Yeah.
oracles at Delphi in Greece. Nobody else gets to find their own answers. You have to go pay the oracles. And that I think is what is changing. And hopefully, what we're doing is to help people realize everyone can do it. Everyone can do it for themselves. Everyone can learn how to get their own answers. There's not like a special person that you have to go to. I remember somebody once, Cody, emailed me, I want a session with you, David, and only from you. And I was like, you're never going to get it. Not with that attitude. That means it's about
Yeah.
me and it's not about you.
Right. And what we teach is about you, and you have your own answers.
Yeah.
And very often we have there's everybody comes to this work for different reasons, and maybe they have a different goal of what they're wanting to get out of it. But in a real general sense, there's often two types of people that I see come in as a seeker, trying looking for these answers. And so one is the type of person that really kind of knows it exists, but has been so invalidated in it that they feel like they can't access it. So they're opening up and they're having to work through that invalidation and work through all those negative kind of energies around those abilities in themselves or where they had to hide it to survive. And yes, it takes a couple of years. And the other person is the one who is opened up and the world's told them they're crazy because they are in the midst of all of these experiences and energies. They've been having them their whole life. And it's overwhelming to have these experiences and not have a way to get centered and to kind of know who you are in the midst of all of the energy that you're encountering. And the world's told us, we're crazy. Um,
That's
Lewis
right.
Bostwick, who I learned this stuff from, used to do a public lecture. He'd go around and do that he titled "You May Be Psychic, Not Crazy," because he was addressing that input that we get from the world when we are sensitive to energy and we do know what people are thinking, or we do get a glimpse of a future, or we do have these conversations with spirit. And yet, all of that, what the telepathy tapes to me really just starkly showed is that whole world that we speak to all the time is real. It is very, very real,
It would,
and
yes.
energy is very real and important. Like one of the I can't remember which person it was, but he got into crystals and he communicated that he's very sensitive to energy and energy is real, and certain things kind of helped validate or fuel his energy or were a real positive force, and because he was very sensitive to both negative and positive forces because he's just sensitive to energy. And I think we're all sensitive to energy. We just don't realize to the depth that we really are and how much it impacts us. And the whole
Yeah,
inspiration for the name Energy Matters was just speaking to that
yeah.
energy is real and it is maybe one of the most important things in our own kind of journey through life is to recognize energy and how much it impacts us and how to work with it.
And I think it would be very rich that our Western materialistic society was shown that this is real by a group of nonverbal children
Yes,
who were marginalized
right,
for decades. And by the way, a lot of the research that a lot of the skeptics around this form of spelling and nonverbal communication is like 50 years old, and it's come a long
right,
way. And there's new technology and keyboards, and so it's a lot of the skepticism. Some of it, from my research, is it's just outdated and overgeneralized. And in my experience, if you put me in a sterile room and put a bunch of things to my brain and were testing me that way, and it was a bunch of men in suits, I would definitely have a harder time than if I was sitting in a warm room with an open-hearted person who wanted to learn and grow, because I'm not a machine. And part of the assumption here is that love, connection, emotion don't matter, and they should be removed from the equation when they might be the mediums themselves. For example,
right,
it's very common for if a parent is at a distance from their child and their child is injured and they feel it and they freak out. It's very, very common. Nikola Tesla told a story. He was in America and he had a dream that his mother, now I can't remember, grandmother, maybe it was, died in, I think it was like Yugoslavia. And he called and she had died that night. And he remembers vividly having that experience. And so in my experience, the stronger the connection is, the stronger the telepathy or whatever the ability, clairsentient feeling ability, whatever the ability is, the stronger that tends to be. And so I think nothing stronger maybe than a parent and a child, but on and on, partners and siblings, twins. And so to take that out of the equation is so silly. And and just to assume that that's irrelevant and want to remove it is almost a self-validating skepticism that is looking for its own result, you know. So anyway, that's something
Yes.
I've noticed listening to the skeptics and watching the tapes. And if someone's literally lived with their mother, nonverbal speaker, their entire life, and that's who they're closest with mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and that's who they can see, whose thoughts they can see, why would you remove that? I mean, that is the phenomenon that we're studying. Obviously, as a reader, if you're learning to be an intuitive reader, you can work with anybody. It's funny.
Yeah.
I've done sessions where I'm reading a person and all I see is their skepticism. And I'm like, all I see is your skepticism. And that's right. I'm skeptical. And I'm like, well, I'm telling you, that's what I see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
And
no,
no one will
you don't
validate
see I'm
that is a
skeptical.
thing you can see actually is your skepticism. Yeah.
You don't
So
see
that
that.
attunement is so important. And that is one of the challenges as a reader. And we teach people how to attune with someone to read them in a way that's safe. So there's a level of attuning, like with a mother and child, or with a dear friend or a partner, where you really, really open yourself to the other person to get that attunement. To be a reader that's going to read random people over and over again, you can't open yourself quite in that same way and do it over and over again. It's very taxing. And so we teach people how to come into an energetic attunement to read someone in a way that's safe for you, for your psychic space and health. But you do have to come into that energy connection in order to read someone. And and that is a challenge. That's part of the challenge of learning to read is clearing all the energy that lights up when you let yourself connect with someone in that way so that you can clearly see them and not see them through what has kind of come up in your field, in your energy field.
That's a long arc of training. I
It
have a
is.
I have a friend who recently said he wants to turn his abilities off because they're too overwhelming and he doesn't know how to manage them. And I said, well, maybe I could offer you a different perspective. Instead of turning them off, which I think they're a gift, you learn to regulate. You regulate them and have a more balanced approach. A lot of people who are too open, well, they'll often take training with us. They're like, I can't manage all these thoughts coming from the external world, these feelings, these channelings, whatever it is. It's too much. It's over. I can't live my life. It makes me freak out, think I'm crazy. But all they need to do is learn the tools to be able to manage it. If you turn it off, in my experience, you end up miserable because you're just turning off to such an important part of life that's wanting your attention. And then something is lost in the turning off of those abilities or blocking them out or suppressing them into the unconscious. A lot of people get caught in between those two options. Either I'm just so open, I just get clobbered, or I turn it off and I'm kind of missing a piece of myself. And there's definitely a third way.
Yeah. Well, that is the thing. You can't turn it off without turning off a part of yourself or
Right.
denying a part of yourself. And really that part of yourself is very much tied to the creative part of yourself. Your creative expression comes through these abilities. I mean, if you listen to stories of many creators, when something came through, they don't know where it came from. Really, it's like they can't trace it. It just came in and came through, and that is this energy connection that we have. That's really clearly spoken about a lot in this telepathy tapes, where they're making these connections with other spirits or other non-speakers, out of the body. They go into this place on the astral, um, where there's learning and exchange and communication that is very, very real. It's very real to them. And it's always been an interesting step in a student's arc of training when they have that experience. They'll come into the center or the academy and say, oh my gosh, I was at class on the astral last night. There are places where groups of us gather and teaching is happening and sharing of information is happening. And when you start to have that experience in your training, that's like a really big step. Like suddenly the whole game changes because it's happening all the time. this connection with spirit, this expansion into awareness. And
Ye-
ultimately in the tapes, they kind of get to that. They start off with telepathy and they really get to the total esoteric nature of reality towards the end, where they're just talking about the experience of spirit and a person in all levels of dimension. And it's all energy at that point. It's really fascinating.
if you've seen Doctor Strange, there are scenes where he meets with his teacher in these other places, some
Yes.
astral dimension. You'll see that in countless movies and cartoons. You meet up with your master on the mountaintop. He gives you a lesson. You come back to your body, and then you have to play it out. I think that's more real than it might seem, and that's what some of these children are saying they experience. That there's thousands of them and that they'll meet in these places and telepathically
And they call it the hill.
the
They meet
hill.
on the hill rather than the mountain. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe a mountain's too high to climb.
Yeah.
In my 17 years of doing this, I've never one time had a skeptical person ask me for a session. And I've never thought about that before, just as we're having this discussion. Even if I've said I've done this work, never once has one of them said, let me give it a try. Let's see what can we explore here. It's always been just no, get the hell away from me. And,
Yeah.
and it's hard to be in society and to do this kind of work and be open about it because there's such a taboo around it and a criticism. And so I never mention if someone, I introduce myself to someone, they say, "What do you do?" I never say this. That's like 5 conversations or a couple years away.
Right.
I will never say I do this kind of thing. Maybe if you're in like a specific subgroup that's open to it,
Right. You
it's
can say you
possible.
teach meditation,
Yeah.
right? Or you do maybe energy work depending on the person, but usually it's like, well, I teach meditation or I
Yeah.
do spiritual work. So then their own mind can fill in the blank. Yeah, I haven't had skeptics willingly come to me. Usually when I'm get in a place where I'm reading or working with a skeptic, it's because someone else brought them in or told them they need to do this. And so they're a little under duress to be there. But in terms of a skeptic kind of moving into that exploratory mind and saying, well, let me explore this and be open to it, that uh, doesn't happen. You know?
And so just on the mechanics side of this, as when we do our intuitive training, one of the main tools we learn is how to get into the center of our heads and clean it out and refocus so we can learn how to see. And we do this in our seeing energies class too. And so doing that over and over and over again is how you get better and better at these abilities. So there is a way to consciously do it. A lot of people think with intuition, like, oh, you have a dream, it tells you the future, you just wait for the next hit. But but why? Everything else in life you can master, and this too. And so one of the tools we use is we clean out the center of our heads. We know how to reposition our awareness in here, and we learn how to see properly. We learn how to deal with energies that come in externally, other people's feelings, other people's pain, other people's opinions, programming, all of that. We learn how to differentiate between that and clear, what we see clearly. And so we learn how to ground ourselves and have boundaries and run energy, and shift our energy in real time if we're in kind of a low vibrational state, I guess you could say. And so all of these tools combined, practiced over thousands of hours, doing it again and again, is how you sharpen these abilities and expand from telepathy to seeing images, having a knowingness, feeling, hearing. There's many forms of input of how we connect intuitively to the world. And that's you master that over time. But mastering it is different than being all knowing, which is always the number one joke you get. You're psychic, so you must know this already, or you must know everything. And that's so inaccurate. You don't know every. I can see Cody with my eyes on the screen, but I can't see what's happening in China at the moment with my physical eyes. So it's not an infinite ability in every direction all the time. You can focus it and get some information, but it's not you're not perfect or all knowing or all seeing. And people who've never experienced it, they think that's what it is. That means you could see everything about the future, you know everything about me, you know the lottery numbers, and it's like, slow down. I'm a human being. I'm building a muscle, and I can only lift so much weight, just like you. And you can get stronger and better at anything at life, but you will never be all knowing or perfect or any of that. And anyone who claims to be, I always say, find the opposite direction and run as fast as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's always something you can expand into, and you know really with the psychic ability, a lot of it's about focus. So you can get information about what you focus on. That doesn't mean you know everything. That means you have this ability to get information from another aspect or another kind of level of awareness than just thinking or analyzing. And many of the more important answers are in that realm of awareness where energy and spirit lie, and you can only access it through your psychic abilities. And they, in one of the episodes, one of the caretakers started to be able to communicate telepathically with maybe more than one of the people, nonverbal speakers that she worked with. And she talked about how, in order for her to be able to do that, she had to get into a place to clear her mind and go into stillness or into an emptiness to be able to hear the communication from them. But she taught herself how to do that, and she started to
Yeah.
have really great full on communications, conversations, telepathically or nonverbal with the people she was working with.
And the
Um,
the cameraman came in extremely skeptical, and by the
yes,
end was quite converted by watching over and over what these kids can do. I would be fascinated to know how many skeptical scientists who paid attention to this went and met with any of the
right.
families. I would say very few, if any. Um, Questions for those of you who are here live, feel free to drop in some questions, and then we're going to do a meditation for those of you who are
Yeah.
here with us or on our newsletter list. How do you
Oh, and
recognize?
they had Dean Radin on the show.
Oh, right. Me and
We were
Cody.
going to mention that because
Yeah,
we
yeah.
interviewed him early on in our podcast. Yeah.
Careers. Yeah. Years ago, we
Yes.
interviewed Dr. Dean Radin, who's the chief research scientist at the Center for Noetic Sciences in Palo Alto that studies consciousness, which was founded by it was founded by, oh my God, Edgar Mitchell, one of the Apollo astronauts, and he's died
Oh,
some
okay.
years ago. But Dr. Dean Radin is on. He's pretty much in every single documentary ever made about psi phenomenon. So you'll see him
Yeah,
everywhere.
he is.
I'm not surprised he showed up in the telepathy tapes. He was a
Yeah.
scientist at Bell Labs, Harvard, I believe, a physicist of some kind, and incredibly intelligent scientist who decided to devote his life to parapsychology and this kind of work. And he was a really cool dude to talk to, very serious, very dedicated, no,
Yeah.
no
But
BS.
fascinating. Yeah.
Fascinating guy. We
Yeah.
should talk to him again sometime. So anyway, he's in I can't remember which episode, but he's in there.
I don't remember.
So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool. How do you recognize if a moment is telepathic? Yeah, so opening up to these abilities. Um, Putting aside, telepathy is just one ability, but let's just say if we use it in the way the show uses it, which is getting numbers, getting images, getting words. Me and Cody might actually call some of that clairvoyance and not telepathic, but that's fine. Let's call it telepathic. So when it's almost like an image gets imprinted in your mind's eye versus you conjuring it up. So we have conscious thoughts like, I want to go outside and take a run, versus thoughts that they have a different quality of energy. They just seem, if you're quiet, you can tell they've been almost imprinted on your mind. You sense they've come from somewhere else, and you get better at recognizing that the more you meditate and practice over time. And you could, practicing with your animals might be a nice way because they can't verbally communicate with you like a human and mess with your head. With nature, with trees, with plants, a lot of people will do it that way. And you might get an image, a word, or maybe just in some people don't get an image, they get like an impression. is the most accurate way to put
Yeah.
it. It's just like an impression. And so you start to tune into that over and over. I would have it driving often. I'd be driving and then I would just get some, or in the shower. Like when I was in a more eased state, something was flowing, I would get some of those would come through. Um, yeah. And we'll do,
Yeah, and it's difficult to separate the noise. It takes practice because you're separating out the noise from trying to focus on an individual impression or thought that is coming in or through that channel, let's say. So it takes a little practice to be able to focus on that channel and tune in to hear that and clear the other noise, which is why we teach things like getting into the center of the head and clearing that space, clearing the noise so that you can be open to focus on that channel that is where the psychic impression is. So whether we call it telepathy or clairvoyance, clairvoyance really speaks to the envisioning of it, the seeing of it. Um, and whereas telepathy, you might hear it almost like a thought, where in clairvoyance, what I find is it's more of a vision. And we have both, and we don't parse them per se. When once you're in that psychic aware space, you have input from a lot of places, and you learn to register the input that is from the energy connection from the psychic side of things.
yeah. And this is an evolution and it takes practice. Some people, again, have it naturally. Kids, I think, often will have it naturally. Nonverbal folks have it more naturally, but we all have it, and it gets covered up over time. And somebody asked, "Do you think we're being more telepathic now than in the past?" I think it's actually more like we were very telepathic, and then it dipped, and perhaps we're
Mm.
coming
Coming
back up.
back,
And
yeah.
that's why we're talking about the telepathy tapes because it's brought it up in the mainstream consciousness. Um, so yeah, whenever you're closer to nature, whenever you have less thoughts, whenever you live in a more connected world, there's probably more of it. The more materialistic, the more isolated you become, the more noise there is, the more you lose touch with it. And I've known, I worked in the philosophy library in college and studied with very, very intellectual people. And I've seen people who live entirely in their analytical, intellectual minds have the hardest time with this. They can't hear, feel, see anything because they're just so one directional in this certain form of thinking. That those abilities have really closed down. So there are people for sure that have a harder time. There's other people, maybe they live in a constant like anxious state or stress state or survival state. And because that energy is so overwhelming, they also can't seem to tap into anything because they're just
True.
constantly on edge. And to
Right.
release and to let go enough to connect is almost, it feels dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes some people are so sensitive to energy, it is causing the anxiousness and anxiety. They're experiencing the energy, but then it's very difficult to find the space to perceive it and see it consciously. You have to kind of separate from the feeling level and the reaction in the body that happens, which can be unsettling, to move into the place to really hear the message and see it. It's different to experience it kind of impacting the body versus to see it. And we have to teach a lot about that in that journey of opening up one's clairvoyance. Yeah.
Someone was asking if a friend has a thought and then I get that thought instantaneously, would that be telepathy? And yeah, I would define that
Yeah.
as telepathy. Yeah. Um, where are the telepathic channels? Um, that's something we get into in a more advanced space because if we just walk you through that now, but you don't have the full spectrum and tools, it can actually trip you up a little bit. So I don't think that's like saying where are my channeling channels? I think in the like 2 minutes left we have of answering questions that might be too much to go
That
into.
might be a little too deep. Yeah.
Yeah, we usually teach that in like some advanced training. We learn to clean them out and open them up, and it's a whole thing. But you have to get there. Just like if you went to a monastery spiritual school back in the day, and they made you just carry carry water and dig holes for a while and then meditate and then learn and learn and learn until you get there. There's a reason and an order for those things. Just like if you watch Harry Potter too, you don't want to teach someone some stuff and they're not ready and then they trip out. So we there's an
I
order,
have
there's
some
an order
holes
of
I need
things.
dug, so if you want to come.
Tony's got some land, he's got a shovel. Uh,
That's right.
Last thing I want to say about this, and then for those of you who are here, we're going to go into meditation about the telepathy tapes and this in general. The the only approach you'll find on the internet to this, on YouTube, on podcasts, everywhere you look, will be intellectual. It will all and only be intellectual. I'll put my money on it. Uh, it'll all be discussing the possibility, discussing the skeptics, discussing the evidence, discussing the nature of reality, discussing the children, the parents. It's all in the head. It's all intellectual. None of it becomes experiential. To and then someone thinks they're like being edgy by going, maybe it's real. Let me do a video about it and talk about it. And that's like the most edgy
Right.
thing you'll find on the internet. Uh, I watched this one journalist who did a thing on the telepathy tapes, and his conclusion was, you know, it could be possible. We can discuss it. But he would never go near actually practicing it. That would be way
Right.
too far.
And our approach is totally experiential. We
Yes.
just throw you in, let you show you how to get to the place to have the experience. And then unpack it later because you just have to have the experience to make it real. Otherwise, it's all not real. It's just all concepts that you could talk about forever
Talk
and
about
get nowhere.
love. Talk about love.
Yeah.
Talk about swimming, right? You talk about
Yeah.
it. You don't experience it. Talk about meditation. You don't experience it, and that's pretty much all you'll find on the telepathy tapes, or on the other side of the spectrum, some real out there stuff that's just ungrounded and like be careful. So hopefully we can give you something much more experiential here and reasonable and uh, and
And
and not,
grounded,
and not
like you
treat
say.
you
Yeah.
like you're just a brain that needs more information, but an actual spiritual being that is on a path that's opening up to something. So,
Yeah.
just real quick, couple more questions I just saw pop up. Uh, aren't the telepathic channels oh, I already saw that one. My brother has Down syndrome and this ability is real. Thanks, Lynette. Yeah. I
Yeah.
like I was saying earlier in the comments on YouTube, just thousands of people saying I have it, my son has it, my sister has it, over and over and over. And just to deny all of those people the reality is so odd to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Really makes
So
no sense.
so let's do it. If you're here with us, if you're on listening on Spotify or something on the podcast, this is free. Just go to our website, um, and you can do the meditation with us. So,
EnergyMattersAcademy.com.
oh yeah, we should actually say what the website is.
The website is maybe.
That's
Yeah, I
it.
don't know. Yeah.
By the way, we're not going to do one next month because me and Cody will be in the Himalayas meditating with our group. We have one spot left uh, to come to India.
You do.
Want to
One
come?
spot. Yeah.
September 7th to the 16th. So we can't do this next month because I'm going to stay in India for a while after the retreat. And so it'll just be
Yeah, and I'm going right from India to Hawaii to teach a group of psychics for 10
from
days. So
Japan, right?
from Japan, my Japan group. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Cody
Very
is
cool.
now the sensei in Japan for this energy
That's
work.
right.
He
They
and
do. They
Cody,
call me sensei. I love it.
you never shared this. Cody sent me a video of him teaching like 200 people all meditating, doing energy work in Japan. Cody doesn't do social media, so I'm the only person who's ever seen the video. It would be great to share your journey in Japan and how many people you're teaching and all the impact. So anyway,
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's an awesome group. They're lovely people. I love it. I love Japan. And but it's a secret, right?
it-
I'm not sharing it.
you're not sharing it. By the way, if you are here live, so tomorrow morning on Insight Timer, I share a 7-minute gratitude meditation. There's a 10-day challenge going. It's totally free. You just press one button and you're in. And there's already 150,000 or so people signed up to do it. So
Sweet.
you want to do that little gratitude morning thing. It's not telepathic. Maybe it is kind of telepathic, actually, sending out love and gratitude. It's not maybe as deep as today, but it's still, if you want a little more help in the morning, just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Okay, let's
Nice.
do it.
Let's
Uh,
go.
Cody, stop yelling in my head.
I'm like, hurry up, David, hurry up.
By the way, if you're a sensitive person, a lot of your anxiety is probably coming from these, telepathic, empathic energies that you absorb and you don't realize or know how to manage. And so that's part of the work here is, I think a lot of anxious people often it's just that they're overly open and sensitive and can't manage the world. And so
Yeah.
they retreat. Let's find another way. Let's find
I
a better
couldn't.
way.
That's why I got into this work. I
Yeah.
couldn't manage the world. Yeah.
Cody couldn't see physically with his eyes. He would get incredibly shy, right? All that, like, you would really retract.
My thing was I would close down. Yeah, it would
Yeah.
cause me to close down.
Don't worry,
So everybody it affects differently, but
you're not the first.
I think you probably overtalked. I would close down and shut up.
Cody, you're not the first man to close down. It's okay. It's okay. On that note, all right, do this.